The Dutch Golden Age really begins with the beginning of the independence of the Netherlands from Spain. So around the 1500s, the Dutch Revolt begins, which is basically a revolt against the Spanish Empire, led by William the Orange, who was basically the leader in the Dutch Revolt, and their grievances included heavy taxation against the merchants of the time, and also the Counter Reformation led by the Spanish Emperor and Philip II, who really tried to diminish any Protestant beliefs and force Catholicism upon not just Spain but also its colonies, including the Dutch people. So in 1851, after the long fight with the Spanish Empire, the 80-year war is not over. That doesn't happen until 1648. But in 1581, they sign the forget the name, but they basically sign something stating that they secede from the Spanish Empire. It is not official. Spain does not recognize their secession. The 80 years war will follow suit in Spain's attempt to keep them as a colony, but it is basically the Dutch signaling that they are no longer going to be oppressed by the Spanish Empire. So, being the first republic, they really developed this new idea of, I guess you could call it federalism, but it's basically the large federal government, which I believe it was called the State General Assembly, something like that. But there was all these different provinces within the Dutch Republic that really had their own autonomy and were able to self-regulate. Now, while this was nice in regards to being able to make your own laws for the different types of regional economies, it really created a kind of division between the wealthy and the less wealthy, I think, eastern provinces that were really remained more kind of self-sufficient, while the western colonies that were bordering the English Channel, I think they're bordering the English Channel, but they really had the edge up in terms of trade and really developed most of the wealth, mainly Holland. And so, by the Dutch Republic really embracing a laissez-faire, I think that's the way it's pronounced, kind of outlook on the economy and allowing more individual freedom to be able to trade and merchants to be able to make their own money, they quickly became the more dominant economy within Europe. Because prior to then, the monarchs throughout Europe, they were more about controlling every aspect of the economy, making sure that they received every tax dollar possible, and really limiting the ability for people to grow and to be able to trade internationally. Now, the Dutch really, they changed this idea greatly. And so they were able to become dominant globally by setting up trading posts all around the world, whether that be South America, the Northern Americas, Africa, and the East Indies, and they were then able to basically take resources, whether that be morally, usually not, but take the resources and the natural resources and sell them, not even natural resources, and in regards to the Dutch West India Company, humans, they sold, I think it was around 500,000 slaves in total to the Americas. They were really able to become dominant in global trade and kind of founded the global economy that we know today. And so they were also able to become dominant globally by developing technological advances in agriculture and be able to grow more food, have excess, and be able to export. And so that also allowed them to become more economically dominant. And this influx of wealth really allowed for new things to be able to be developed and invested in that weren't really able to be invested in before. For example, infrastructure, new waterways were built, the canals were built. The Dutch were able to drain a lot of the western coastline to be able to have more inhabitable land and thus be able to grow more food and crops. And this furthermore expanded their economic power over the rest of the world. And so by the early 17th century, Amsterdam really becomes the global financial sector, financial hub, kind of what New York is today and London is today. They really control basically all of the trade happening around the world. And a lot of people argue that it's not anything special with the Dutch. It was luck because they were the first to really go after this type of economic freedom. But I mean, you can't call it luck if they're the first group of people to be able to do it. So they really just become economically dominant throughout the world. And their economic dominance is also can be attributed to the East and West India Trading Company, or the Dutch West Trading Company, that really traded with the Americas, and then the East India Company, also known as the VOC, who were kind of monopolies. They were able to become so powerful because different merchant groups and organizations within Amsterdam really came together and noticed that you can make a lot more money when you're one instead of five. So that today is looked down upon in terms of monopolization, but it was what led to the fast and rapid growth of the Dutch Empire, really. And all this influx of wealth and money, and just the heightening of standard of living due to the trade that brought the Dutch people really out of the slums. All that wealth created a higher standard of living and allowed for the investment in tons of other things that weren't possible before, such as science, arts, just tons of other industries that had really been secondary or not a priority before then. For example, the art industry really boomed. There was just a lot more wealth and dynasties that commissioned artwork to be done, and that created tons of art that's still present today that can be witnessed. And also it created advancements in science and investment. All this new wealth allowed for universities to be established, and so a lot more people were educated, and therefore more advancements were made in science and technology. For example, I think that the rings of Saturn were discovered by, I think I have it somewhere on here, Christian Huygens. He discovered the Saturn had rings and made a lot of advancements in astronomy, and also invented the pendulum clock, which therefore made trade even more efficient for better track of time. And then all this advancement in technology, it really was all concentrated in Holland, which was the wealthiest province of all of them. And it concentrated the wealth just in one location and made Amsterdam a very powerful force, really throughout the entire continent of Europe. They were just untouchable. And then in 1648, the Treaty of Munster is signed, and that officially recognizes the Dutch independent from Spain. And from that point out, they get a little ahead of themselves. They go into war with England, I think 3 consecutive times, and they expend a ton of resources on war and make a lot of conflict, and they end up getting invaded by Germany, France, and England. And while they are able to defeat them and push them back, it causes really irreversible damage to the infrastructure and the well-being of the Dutch Republic. And so the Dutch Golden Age really it starts in the late 1500s, and it persists all the way through the late 1600s. But towards the end of the 1600s and early 1700s, they begin to wind back as some of the other the monarchies within Europe and other countries around the world start to catch on to the economic development and set up their own trading monopolies. And the Dutch, they're no longer ahead of the game. They're kind of with the pack. So that's when the Golden Age kind of ends. But that's the history of the Dutch Golden Age.